Let's go.
Vincent, Nicole, Christopher, Maura, we're going to get started. Okay, welcome to Lit Balm.
Let me mute everybody and then let me mute everybody and let the readers unmute real quick.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm unmuting Larissa, and Mark's unmuted himself because he does that. Wait, I'm trying to unmute Larissa. There we go.
Nope, still not unmuted. She's going to, oh, here we go.
There we are.
There we go, good enough. All right. Welcome everybody to Lit Balm. My name is Larissa Schmilo and we're happy to be here. Black Lives Matter, okay? Let's just get that straight. We have a great show for you tonight. We have Nicole Cooley. Vincent A. Cellucci is phoning in from the Netherlands. He's zooming in from the Netherlands. We have Christopher Shipman. We have Maura Way. We have a great show for you tonight. And it is now my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Mark Vincent, who has published 14 books of poetry, including more recently Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, and Here Comes the Night Dust. Vincent is a prolific translator and has published 10 books of translations. Most recently, Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Mertz, and which was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. His work has received fellowships and grants from the Swiss Arts Council, the Literary Colloquium Berlin, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Witter-Binner Foundation for Poetry. He has the unique distinction also of having been nominated for a pushcart 37 times. All right, 37 times. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Vincent. Mark, grace us with a poem.
Thank you, Larissa. I thought today I'd try a little experiment and write a poem 1 hour before the show and see what I ended up with. So this is what I ended up with. It's called A Modern Prometheus. And there's a quote from Mary Shelley in the name of Frankenstein's monster. There is something at work in my soul which I do not understand. There was a therapeutic plan. At the École, you were more affected than ceremonial. You were lavished, comfort-seeking, only here and now. Those murmurs along the boardwalk when you sought your artificial sleep, diving into coral reefs, wreathed in garlands of seaweed. Those were murmurs through beards, homage to the old world, touched by honking horns. Yes, you shouldered the planet. Miraculous, really. How does one create you? Yes, you sat there on the piazza at the fountain, feeding pigeons with yesterday's stew bread. Boys were leapfrogging. And in your head, you heard the specters of King Lear and Cordelia. You stared skyward, thinking tragedy, everything dissolved in smoke and ash. Trifles, really, no? I know you're thinking of providing the stimulus they need. If only the canal were less parallel, we might talk about fantasies. Instead, we obey all orders, our noses pressed flat against the glass. The years, if we had any, are working against us. Or perhaps you can die twice. And now, to my dear friend and co-host Larissa. Larissa's new novel is Sly Bang, from Spite and Nival. Her first novel was Patient Woman. Her poetry collections are Medusa's Country, Special Characters, In Paran, the chapbook A Cure for Suicide, and the ebook Fib Sequence. Her poetry albums are No Net World and Exorcism, for which she won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award. Schweiler's work has appeared in the anthologies Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters from Penguin, Words for the Wedding from Penguin, Contemporary Russian Poetry, Dalkey Archive Press, and Choice Words from Haymarket. Larissa is the original English language translator of the futurist opera Victory Over the Sun by Alexei Krusheniek, performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and theaters and universities worldwide. Larissa also edited the anthology 21st Century Russian Poetry and has been a translator for the Eugene A. Nida Institute for Biblical Scholarship of the American Bible Society. Please welcome Larissa Schmeiler.
Hello. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, the New Cemetery Award I win. That's perfect lead-in.
Sorry.
No, listen, that's a perfect lead-in for my poem, which is called To the Thanatos Within Me. Okay, this poem is called To the Thanatos Within Me. A dear friend of ferment who unearths the worms that enrich this blissful human soil, promising the end of eternal roil, I embrace you, dear shadow, my revelatory friend. Dear suicidal impulse, today I dream of the parapets above, à la Vieille Russie, and of splattering near the plaza, where Woody Allen wooed young girls, leaving a bit of me on the Strand book stand, near the park and the seals, but this is too vibrant and real. Better to find myself alone in a porcelain tub with chamomile bath oil, as if I needed to be calm. There is eternity to that. Listening to Verdi's Requiem, holding a razor, or better still, to poison myself with small scored pills, avoiding arsenic and the Bovary traps of indigestion, detection, best with caplets, red carafes, of wine or Guinness brew. Who wouldn't want to quaff a few? What catharsis there is in the dive, the gesture, the infinite jest, the slash, the brush, its own fire, the dance with death. Ah, this as I flirt, you draw near, chingon to my chingada, bite my ear, stop my breath. Who else could do that? Te quiero, my mezcal, my absinthe, my blue cynosing corpse, my Mayakovsky, my you. Was this a mistake? Is it too late? You bite my ear, take up my rear, whisper, yes. Thank you. Okay. Now I am going to introduce the lovely and talented Jonathan Penton, my co-host, my beloved co-host. In 1998, Jonathan Penton founded unlikelystories.org, a powerful source of literature. Since then, he has lent editorial and management assistance to a number of literary artistic ventures such as Mad Hat and Big Bridge. He has organized literary performances and performed himself in Arkansas, California, Chihuahua, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oregon, Texas, and Washington State and DC. His poetry books are Last Chap, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods, Standards of Sididity, and the free E-Chap backstories, which you can download from Argotist. Please help me welcome Jonathan Penton.
Thank you, Larissa. So as Larissa says, I've been running unlikelystories.org for 22 years, and I'm not terribly prolific. So what I do most weeks is read a poem that we published last week in Unlikely Stories. And I'm going to do that this week. This is called Outskirts, and it's by Toby Hiller. And it's for the philosopher Daniel Dennett. I am an outskirts native. The city, yes, it's breathing flesh, but urban somewhere between lost and found and flay and wander smeared on forest, where civilization remains ruins. In a city poem, years ago, she who wrote The Hip's the Hub. I sympathize with horses who unrolled the plains. Grass grew wide in their tracks. Yes, it's an odd world, Dan, beyond our reasons. Might as well count violets, weigh wind, chart the angle of an eagle's glance, ask which nuclear bomb the US used to blow holes near the Colorado River. I revere our native god, the Colorado. Natural gas lies underground nearby. They never piped it out-bombed. It glowed too on kitchen. Did I say reason? Still, water's silver marks the map. Our feet, red mild earth. Plowed brown seeps down to a core's brutal red. Which core? How heartfelt. I respect spiders, whose webs outsteal ours, try to embrace cusp, each footstep. Or is that just my seam spume of expectation? Splinter mirror of each atom holds the double helix paradox of stillness as motion, the 2 in 1, the 10,000 on a pinhead. So please, Dan, carve me a table. I still remember beds of violets, though so much has evaporated beyond those first high kite clouds, tree mansion myths, snap blur whirl of willow. Water articulates intricacy, the maze thickets into cave and flies apart. And they know, do you know what I mean, Dan? More than me. Thank you. I'd also like to mention that this upcoming Wednesday, July 1st at 7:30 US East Coast time, we'll be having a book release party for Unlikely Books. We're releasing The Deepest Part of Dark by Anne Elizabeth Pluto. Annie Pluto will be there reading, as well 2 other Unlikely Books authors, Kyla Rodney and Tara Campbell. So I really hope you can make that. It's at 7:30 Wednesday, and you can find more about it by searching Unlikely Books on Facebook. You'll get the meeting ID, and it's on Facebook Live. It'll be on Facebook Live at the Unlikely Books Facebook page. Okay, so enough of all that. It's my great pleasure to introduce our features. Let me unmute them. Let's see here. Thanks for your patience. While we unmute our features, I don't see Nicole. Well, we've got Maura, who is first up. Maura, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, great. Originally from Washington, D.C., Maura Way lives in North Carolina by way of Boise, Idaho. Her work has appeared in Diagram, the Beloit Poetry Journal, Verse, Poet Lore, and the Chattahoochee Review, among others. Another Bungalow, her debut collection, was released by Press 53 in 2017. She has been a school teacher for 22 years, most recently at New Garden Friends School in Greensboro. Maura, are you going to read for us?
Yep, I've got 3 poems I'm going to read.
Great.
The first one I thought about because it has a payphone in it, and this feels like sort of the opposite of a payphone. It's called In Mawa the Rhododendron. In Mawa the rhododendron grow as tall as dogwoods, but no one believes in New Jersey anymore. Kilmer's trees and tracks much more lovely than his rest stop, where I call to say, I'll be there soon. Payphone feels as old as granite, the crisp pressure of neat squares, a job to do. Each number issues its own report, digits remembered as design, triangles, crosses. Go ahead and finger the cool ribbed snake, speak into the gray, pick up so much left by other hands and mouths. The slickumed man in khakis circles, but keeps his distance. This is to know your limits, your effect on others. Back home, my rhododendron droop in humid mulch. They are so young and disconnected, never ever having had to stop to make a phone call. The second poem is about a bad date, and it takes place in Washington, D.C., where I'm from originally. After dinner at Luigi's, I sideswiped a very big Benz right on DuPont Circle proper. I was driving my Dodge Neon and was on a half-blind date with a law student. He told me not to say anything. Very friendly men smoking small cigarettes poured out of the Mercedes, took a quick look and said it was nothing. No damage, see? Such a sturdy, sand-colored luxury sedan was immune to green economy cars with questionable lane integrity. My date and I had met at a Halloween party. He wasn't in costume, and I was dressed up as a Caps hockey puck. When he spilled his Zima at dinner, I was relieved that the jinx part of the date was over. Then I got in a fender bender on our way to Bedrock Billiards. I've always assumed the men in the Benz were Saudis, the flowy one-piece button-ups, the white keffiyeh affixed with twisted black cords. Now I know that this was a hasty generalization. That law student never called me again. I beat him at pool, and surely he imagined unmet miracles under that hockey puck. And my last poem is a Greensboro poem, and it's called New Souths. Let hate and granite have no place here on Granite Fountains, sponsored by the Serendipity Garden Club. You can build all the parks you want, but what you need are people who would rather be outside than inside, adults who can stand being around other adults who they have not hand-selected for freshness and quality, other adults with other habits, those other unpredictable adults who dream and strive and love. A single kid swings listlessly on a $7,000 cedar custom-designed playset in his massive backyard. His trees are too new for shade. He drags his foot. He doesn't have to share. He goes inside to play Doom for the rest of the afternoon. He's very good at it. He hasn't had the same opportunities as other American boys. I'm sitting on a bird. I'm flying. The children in the downtown swingless business park scream at sullen strangers. They are in danger down here. They have made something out of nothing. This world has not been childproof. Dogs die, the wolf wins. There is a gathering place at the new urbanist shopping center where you can safely loose the kids. Yes. This is the best of all worlds. They can run and play and eat ice cream. It looks so safe, ensconced by high-end retail and little tiny white lights, lots of security guards. It's just like being in a city, but without, so it's better. 5 boys on small bikes skid through the park, disrespecting the granite. Some are too small to be out on their own. Someone should be watching them. They jump the curb into traffic, laughing and screaming. Because they are alive, they may die early. They may not want to work in a cubicle or on a screen all day. They haven't had the same opportunities as other American boys. Indoor cats don't miss the outside because they don't know it exists. Just because I thought catch a tiger by the toe was the only version of the rhyme doesn't mean it was. How will the children know what to change if we don't let them see any problems? Oh, but they see. Oh, say can they see. They see the backward past, and it is us. Thank you so much.
Maura, thank you. Wonderful. All right, Vincent, can we hear you? Let's see here. Ask to unmute Vincent. Excuse me. Vincent.
Am I unmuted now?
You're unmuted now.
Yay.
All right. Vincent A. Cellucci. He wrote Absence Like Sun and An Easy Place to Die. He edited Fuck Poems, an exceptional anthology, and has 2 collaborative titles, Comeback River and A Ship on the Line, which was a finalist for the Eric Hoffer Award. Vincent performed Diamonds in Dystopia, an interactive poetry web app at South by Southwest in 2017, and the poem was anthologized in Best American Experimental Writing, 2018, excuse me. After writing and living it up in Louisiana for 18 carnivals, he moved to the Netherlands to experience sinking someplace new. He works at the TU Delft Library. Vincent, gonna read for us?
Yep. Thank you, Jonathan and Larissa and Mark. So nice to be in the jet stream. And thank you all for being here. I would add just to that is that we're going to strong arm Jonathan. And when I say we, Chris Shipman and myself are working on a new collaboration that hopefully Jonathan will find warrants putting out. I wanted to start the poetry reading. This is my first distance poetry reading. And I wanted to start it off with a poem that's quite old now, but it's a translation collaboration that I'm working on with a Bengali poet that I really hold near and dear and very inspirational to me, named Devangana Banerjee. And the title of the poem is Distance, How Far You Are. So I think you'll see why it resonates with me. Distance, how far you are. In the beginning, there was a distance. Exactly how far, I could not know. Time hibernates, unseen for days. Monsoon has come and gone. Puddles form exact shapes to slip across. The oak draws its shadow in a visible distance, completing a lonely evening. The distance loses its patience, condenses into images, consumed in melancholy. The distance displaces its indifference. It shuts me in poems until dawn. Yet still orbits urge to consummate the distance. Time hunts, wish it would gather for days. To sow would sow together distance and me. The shadow of the oak tree spans across the mud road. In the beginning, there was distance. Exactly how far, I could not know. If only the sudden rain of Louisiana washed out all the distance, spread the distance of the oak branches, sank. The distance and the sound of the river, time courses, escaping my grasp. Spring has come and gone, colored our circumference drunk. The oak shadow expands past recognition. In the beginning, there was a distance. Whether we meet at that distance or not, I could not know.
I think the canine accompaniment helped set the mood.
Yeah. Do you hear Caldonia actually whistling, like sleep whistling in the background?
Oh yeah.
So Poets with Hounds, Brett. We have Brett and I always joke about our group with hound dogs and poetry. So the next poem is actually maybe the first, I don't know, I can't even remember. But one of the first poems I wrote in Delft, in this new land. And so I want to share it with you. My ghost flew from city to country. And this will hopefully be in the new collaboration. Yesterday it was so foggy, walking home from the library. I couldn't see the old church's tower, just the smaller two twin steeples. And there was a confidence in knowing there's something so large looming invisibly. The cathedral's ghost I believed in more than any greater significance of church. I have yet to climb that tower, unseen and filling this traveler with an irregular flight of faith. on this particular evening pass. Too windy every time I've tried, and even though you can't smell them anymore or visit the crypt, you can read an eyeful inside about how the hollows are packed with royal bones. Delft, a painter's town, of 2 church towers, one old and one new, and the resting place until this day, or opaque evening to be precise, for the House of Orange, where the assassination of William by a fanatic Catholic was the first assassination with a handgun in history, combined with the fact the Spanish had sacked Breda, predecessor home of royal bones. So here he stayed away from greater cities, hosting greater ghosts, and I think about my own little disappearing act from everything. How the fog welcomes only what's in front of it. A lesson particularly useful for apparitions. There's another one. One puddle in particular makes my raining days. Most days it's the mare formed in the middle of the bike path under the construction heading to campus and away from Delft's center city canal, southern drain. The dampest of spirits is no match for the crossing of this puddle. As we speed in packs like Dutch rats to face our duties and whatever gnaws on us, there's a moment in passing where everyone, secretly delighted, slows down, pulls their feet off the pedals. Some even rise, as if about to float, and coasts out of their brooding into the inevitable splashing out of our personal paths. We acknowledge our role in our own jeopardy, the oncomer making us all kin in our brief exodus from everything. And this is another one, chronic ketonic disorder. I take it on the lam with Chiron, crypsis on the river Styx, loose lips sink dinghies. Lord knows that's always been my Achilles. Spiel, gagged with a bribe, this gold holds frost, as well as the darkness of depths. Can't lay lower than the underworld. An old soul in the oldest hole, where telling is the only escape from toiling. Prisoners always got something to say. Just wait, even the silent ones out. We all get here the same way. Passion and the lack of control. A lengthy stroll downriver, searching for what we lost. Past the past, past the marsh, swallowing each step with more muddy hunger. Our crab traps are broken, so you pull up the neighbors when he's not looking. Who wants the claws when you can eat the tails in hell? It's the smell, really, that brings me back. And the hordes of people filing their voids with the last pleasures of flesh. More a sight for sucking everything in than the fish market or a racetrack. More viral than live. A Catabasa's clapback. The most gruesome of getaways. It's a wish, a wash, a virtual burial rite for those that don't ever want to see past the night. And this will be my last poem. Alt burial rites. I too have been envious of the pallbearers, excluded, probably from my youth or smaller stature, from the last time you have to help someone make a move. We too have been brothers in dirt, waterlogging our dreams to make them even heavier, chasing them or the cat or the tail, often our own, to bury our dead, the bones, or barbecue them into the biblical dust we were promised. Decisions without revisions decimate the decimals, black holes swallowing all white holes. Vomit all. No funerals or wills, and infinite funerals and wills in space-time. We get the distance to solve everything, unable to reach alternative selves. We will long for the burdens of this shadow world we wait to be burned into.
Vincent, thank you so much. And thanks for joining us in the middle of the night. What time is it?
It's 11-ish after.
11-ish. Well, that's not bad then.
That's early.
Yeah. Nicole, can we hear you? Let's see here.
How's that?
Wonderful.
Great.
Nicole Cooley grew up in New Orleans and now lives outside of New York City with her family. She is the author of 6 books of poems, most recently Of Marriage and Girl After Girl After Girl, as well as 2 chapbooks and a novel. She is the director of the MFA program in Creative Writing and Literary Translation at Queens College CUNY. Nicole, would you like to read for us tonight?
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here. And thank you, Mark, Jonathan, and Larissa for the invitation. It's wonderful to hear my fellow readers, and I look forward to the rest of the reading. I'm going to read 3 poems tonight. And the first is from one of my recent books, Girl After Girl After Girl. And then I'm going to read 2 new poems. So this poem is called Mad Money. And that's a concept people are probably familiar with. But if you're not, I invite you to lose the rest of your evening on eBay looking up Mad Money jewelry, which is sort of what this poem's about. Mad Money was a term invented in 1922 in the Bryn Mawr Alumni magazine, bizarrely, which was to refer to money that a young woman brought with her on a date in case her date quarreled with her or became drunk. So if you want to go on eBay later, like I have one, there's Mad Money lockets with a tiny dollar bill folded up inside. There's brooches, there's bracelets. It's really quite fascinating. But I found it when I found out about what Mad Money was, I thought it was super interesting. And the other thing I should say about this poem is, the dictionary is like many writers, I'm going to say, is my best friend. But I looked up the word nostalgia because I was interested in it, and the definition really, really surprised me. And that definition is in the poem too. Mad Money. When I find my mother's jewelry box, blonde leather, impossibly 50s teenage, desire fills my chest like dirty shredded Kleenex. Desire for my mother's 16-year-old self. Beside the place for pearls, a drawer labeled Mad Money. Inside the drawer, a blue soap crumbled to dust, and 3 nickels I set in my mouth, wanting silver bitterness. Money she saved so she could run away? The first nostalgics were men at war, mercenaries in the French army longing for their villages. Originally a medical condition, in the 18th century, nostalgia meant severe homesickness, a disease. Nostalgia from German, Heimweh, Greek, nostos, meaning homecoming, and algos, pain or grief. My nostalgia is never a lovely wishing, but instead soldiers marching through yellow fields, dizzy with nausea. When I open her jewelry box, I want to lie in my mother's twin bed on clean white sheets, to let go of my body, to become the girl she was, mother, not mother. Under my tongue, her coins are cool and slick, and I'm sick for a home I never lived in. I slip on my mother's pink coat from high school, color of a Dairy Queen dipped cone, color of a flushed cheek after a slap. So, my second poem takes place in New Orleans. I grew up 2 blocks from the Mississippi River, and I feel like that's really shaped me as a person. So this poem is about that. And it's also about the fact that my mother died suddenly in the spring of 2018. And the poem is called On the Mississippi River Levee, Styrofoam Cup in My Hand. On the Mississippi River Levee, styrofoam cup in my hand that will disintegrate in 1,000 years, I drink my coffee, stand in gravel in my church skirt, black velvet I wore to my mother's funeral 11 days ago. Take a photo of my own shadow on the railroad tracks to Snapchat to my daughters. While this river outside my parents' house is risen higher than in years. Spillways opened, live oaks sunk in mud, grass littered with plastic bags and beer cans. Levee trash, a photo essay, my former self might think. That self so well versed in irony, that careful daughter who would take notes on weeds and garbage and shut her notebook. Now, on the levee, a white truck speeds by too fast. Maybe a man who picks up shifts on rigs for extra money. And in a former life, I'd write a poem about how that man might be dangerous to my daughters. Now I write nothing. I am here to walk off my restless sadness, to walk off my mother's voice. Years ago, after the storm, when the city flooded, telling me she will never leave New Orleans, no matter how high water rises, how many times levees breach, telling me she will die in her house, no evacuations, no hospitals. Now I know grief has its own typography. Mine is this city and this coast. And I'm going to conclude with a very new poem, which was just published in a book that came out 2 weeks ago, an anthology titled Together in a Sudden Strangeness, American Poets Respond to the Pandemic. It's edited by Alice Quinn. And this poem is about our current situation. It's about the fact that I live in New Jersey outside of New York, but I teach in Queens, and Queens has been, until very recently, the epicenter of COVID-19. And I also live by train tracks. This is sort of like now the train tracks are like the river were for me as a child. And I guess that's all I'm going to say about this. The poem is called, my last poem, At CVS Wearing a Mask, I Buy Plastic Easter Eggs for My Daughters. My boot heels on pavement. The sound drags me back to myself as I walk. The air rinsed cold, near bitter. I shove my hands inside my winter coat, slip latex gloves over my fingers, mask my face. Once, when I was a child, my mother and I lay body to body. Now I feel for the edges of myself, untethered. Houses I walk by are strung with Christmas lights. In New Jersey, we're told to decorate again this April for cheer and hope. 2 years ago in New Orleans, I remember wanting to snap the heads off daffodils because my mother was dead, craving that violence. At home now, I scrub the plastic eggs, stuff them with chocolate, listen to the news from Queens, the counts of the dead, while thinking about my students. How I wish feeling terrible felt useful as it did when I was a teenager. Yet this can't be the lesson I teach my daughters. Outside the hospital in Elmhurst, refrigerated trucks in the parking lot will house the bodies. Tiny white lights strung on a gutter, a hiss of oxygen. A body looking like it is sleeping but actually dead. My mother when my father found her. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much. I didn't know that the term Mad Money had such a specific history. I'd always heard it as a cache of a store of cash that a woman would keep to leave her husband. When did you say it was coined? Oh, you muted again? Sorry. Let me unmute you.
Yeah, can everybody hear me? It originally was bizarrely coined in 1922 in the Bryn Mawr College Alumni Magazine, but you can find references to it everywhere. There's even a very bad movie from the 80s called Mad Money. But it's really fascinating to think about. And I gave a reading one time in Texas, and I asked how many of people knew it, and many of the young women came up afterwards and showed me their wallets with their Mad Money. So it's still a thing that happens.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. Okay, Christopher, can we hear you? Ask to unmute.
Can you hear me?
We can.
All
How are
right.
you doing?
Good, good.
All right. Most recently, Christopher Shipman is the author of The Movie My Murderer Makes, Season 2. Shipman's work appears in journals such as Cimarron Review, Pank, Pedestal Plume, Salt Hill, Sport Press, and Tenderloin, among others. His poem, The 3-Year Crossing, was the winner of the 2015 Motion Poems Big Bridges Prize, judged by Alice Quinn. The Ship on the Line, co-authored with Vincent Cellucci, was a finalist for the Eric Hoffer Award, but we knew that already. Shipman, who uses his last name in his bios, lives in Greensboro, North Carolina, where he teaches literature and creative writing at New Gardens Friends School and dances to the boss with his 5-year-old daughter on his shoulders. Christopher, are you going to read for us?
I am. I should say 6 now. Finn just had our 6th birthday last Saturday. So anyway, yeah, my last name I think is much cooler than my first name, which is why, and everybody calls me by that most of the time anyway. So thank you, Jonathan and Mark and Larissa and Amanda and fellow readers and everyone for tuning in. This is really awesome. This is my second Zoom reading experience. One of my friends from a stint at Kenyon College is here, Joe, who set up a reading for the alum of a program we were a part of. I did that very recently, which was a lot of fun. But I'm going to navigate away from seeing all of you so I can read the stuff that's on my screen because I have no printer and I can't take advantage of the printer at my school. So if you can't hear me, please, Jonathan, say something. So I'm just going to read a few poems from the collab that Vince was talking about that we have been working on for quite a while now. That's called Getting Away with Everything. I'm going to read a poem sort of near the beginning, a poem near the middle, and a poem near the end. The first poem is called Solastalgia, which is a neologism. I guess like the easiest way to describe it, if you don't know, is a term that refers to the pain you feel when your home no longer exists, at least not in the same way. It often refers to like environmental change. So this poem uses an epigraph from Richie Blink from an article titled "Louisiana's Disappearing Coast Takes Ancient History with It," which was actually at first an interview on WWNO, New Orleans Public Radio. So here's the epigraph. We would come out of the floodgates and my dad would say, "Head for the lemon trees." The older folks always discouraged us from going, out of respect. The legend goes that you were always to bring some kind of sacrifice, so somebody left some lemons for the ancestors. but now that it's washing away, it needs to be seen before it gets lost. Solastalgia. It's easy to imagine Richie Blink on the radio, unblinking when he speaks. Words like floodgates or my dad. And when he says say, then lemon trees, something as simple as going really goes. It's even easier to love the young ones, imagining spirits alive in the blood the old folks left, when he says respect or sacrifice. But when legend slips out of his mouth, it sounds like ancestor, like washed away, like lost. I say, selfishly, before the final island disappears, let's tell a story, every story ever told, that lives in the static on every station. Let's get away with everything. While we're still slow in the process of disappearing, let's head for the lemon trees. Pluck the fruit, pluck yesterday, pluck ancient history, pluck today. In that distance, the past glistens. The floating house grows its own waves. Yesterday's hanging limbs say, don't let this be the last memory of me. Head for the trees, make an offering. Let us swim. If the water is always moving, it can't be a thing we can just call water, then turn away. The waves lap at the door, the way an open letter tucked in a drawer in a previous life wants another tongue. The sky swallows their story to feed it to next life clouds. If the sky is never finished, nothing is. So that's the first one. And I think I mentioned earlier, I just got back from the beach with some great friends. I think one of them, maybe two of them, are joining us right now. So I thought I would read a poem that is also in the collab with Vince that I wrote last year after returning from the same beach house. It's called Here Comes the Rain, and this one is much more narrative and prosaic than previous. Here comes the rain. Between the sea and the salt marsh, my in-laws' bijou beach house squats on its stilts, above a thicket of cordgrass and bluestem, where for the last 2 nights, some critter hidden from my phone's dim flashlight in the brush below the back deck has made its noise toward the water. It's Mother's Day. Sarah's mom sits on the deck, reading while she reclines in a plastic Adirondack. Sarah, silent beside her, does the same. A book on women surrealists held up awkwardly to block the sun. The kids couched, gripped by the unflinching eye of an iPad, so I step out to ask the mothers if they'd prefer I go to the closest grocery for cinnamon and vanilla. I promise to cook French toast. Appetite doesn't demand it, Sarah says. Her mother's nod agrees. I point out a kettle of hawks sporting the blue above a lone cormorant, the span of its unfolded wings meant to intimidate any predator. Sarah nudges past me, grabs the binoculars that belong to the house. When she's finished, she passes them to me, returns to the tabled book. I fumble to adjust the settings, scan the scar of land jutting out from the marsh but can't spot the cormorant. Instead, I find the American flag at the edge of the neighbor's deck. Last night, after everyone had gone to bed, a strange shadow whipped back and forth across the marsh. I didn't know right away what the black swath belonged to, but when I attached shadow to flag, I wished I had the drugs needed to help me see it, to face or forget whatever it might have meant. I mentioned this to Sarah, make my noise toward the kitchen. At the oven, I'm still holding the binoculars. Dizzy from their lenses, I stumble back to the deck, hand them over, notice the sky blurring a bit, swearing an oath to rain. I remember that roar we'd heard at the beach the last 2 days, like the sky was shedding its skin. We thought at first it must be planes hidden by clouds, a rumble of thunder, but there were no clouds at all. I remembered what Jack Kerouac said about the sea, which I read on a framed piece of embroidery decorating the toilet in the guest bathroom, that it must be the roar of eternity. I think now there must be a major insinuation I'm missing. Now, the moment when the rain begins to come down. Can everyone still hear me? Yes? Okay. Because
Yeah, you're great.
my Zoom is actually changing colors in the bottom of my screen. Yeah, just checking. I'm going to close with this poem, which a version of was published recently in Moss Trill, which Vince turned me on to. Thank you, Vince. So I'm going to close with this one. Thanks again. An American Wake. Oh, I should say, I forgot. Thank you to Brett. Shout out to Brett, if he's still on here, for the first line of this poem. It's not forbidden yet to play the jester. So the boss man wears his oh-so-contemporary cap to the obligatory office party. You know the one, the sad American red, snapback shaped like an oubliette, wild as the masses at half-mast, strange as the bigotry sweating the need now to hide beneath it, for the first time, its thousand strands. Let us consider one story, another metaphorical leap. Every strand a seashore disappearing, every bit of stubble a spike, a blade contending ownership of sand and retracting equal rights, like shadows cast over shadows. A literal, foaming white at the bank, flooded with blacked out ghosts of black bodies is not a metaphorical leap. We are all born betrothed to the past, and we all see what's lost in the long divorce because it's caught on film. I suppose it's all right to tell you, I suppose you already know, something the opposite of Wordsworthian has my tongue by its pincers. So I tell the jokes I know to the people I know, backed into the corners I know. Here I shake my fist, rattle the glassy ice disappearing, and begin disappearing toward the bar. I am an ocean falling on the walkable world. I might as well grow wings because I know how to fool everyone, force fun from an egg cup, if you have one handy. I can, like a nest, fashion a laugh out of white feathers, white sky, as in sharp against, as in dull against, as in the screwed up punchline, as in the usual disappointments, as in the big boss man clamoring around the obligatory office party, pretending everything above/below the unbroken bill of his numbly contemporary cap isn't falling from the sky. But I tell no joke because there is no joke to tell. Only broken yoke to slip in. The white lines the streets. But it's not yet forbidden to repel any anti-personnel, to think, to witness, to tell, to try to get away with everything, is to know anyone backed into any corner owns a tongue that won't cease to speak until the sky ceases to fall. The sky is never finished, so nothing is. So now I begin. Thank you.
Shippy, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you. I'm about to turn it over to Larissa for the open mic. Before I do, I just wanted to thank Amanda Roberts, Mad Hat's intern, who does such a good job of keeping the space safe and organized. And I also wanted to remind you one more time that on Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. US East Coast time, there will be a book release party for The Deepest Part of Dark by Anne Elizabeth Pluto. And you can find that by searching Unlikely Books for Facebook, Unlikely Books on Facebook, excuse me, or you can go to www.unlikelystories.org to get more information on that. All right, Larissa.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Nicole Cooley, Vincent Cellucci, Christopher Shipman, and Maura Way. That was extraordinary. Give them all a hand. Let's hear it. Let's hear it for them. Wonderful, extraordinary reading. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Before we go into the open mic, I'd like to tell you about our upcoming readings. Next week, July 4th, Independence Day, we have a founders reading. Mark, Jonathan, and I will be reading with special guests Elaine Equi, Jerome Sala, and John Yao. Do not miss this. July 4th, it's a blowout. And July 11th, the Russians are coming. We're going to have Alexander Skidan, Philippe Nikolaev, Matvey Yankelevich, and Irina Mashinsky talking about contemporary Russian poetry. Again, you're not going to want to miss that. All right. So, and yes, a shout out to Amanda Roberts, who our technical coordinator, for all her good work. Thank you very much, Amanda. All right, we're moving on to the open mic. Do we have Ronald Bremner with us now?
Yes, you do. Yeah, before I start, I'd like to say a couple things. First, I'd like to thank all the readers. They were excellent, and the hosts. Thank you very much. The second thing I'd like to say is my friend Susanna Rich is in a reading at 7:30 tonight. I put the link in the chat. That's the Palisades poetry series, and she's very good, so you'd really enjoy it. Now, I write a lot of poems about Sri Lanka. In my last chapbook, there were most of the poems were about Sri Lanka, and this one that I'm going to read tonight managed to make it into Laura Boss's lips, and it's called "On a Teardrop Island." It is about Vilakale Prabhakaran, who was the leader of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Elam. So this is On a Teardrop Island. This night screams of betrayal. Its dainty freshness pulls you into a harrowing slide down a hole into a field of burnt offerings. Where was he? Who was she? How could they? They alighted like butterflies on the overgrown bushes of your back, tipping off militia that there you were. But like a slippery chameleon, you rise, changing both form and color, to taste the bloody din of a night without pity, and take your revenge in the sweet dawn. That's it.
Thank you so much, Ronald. Thanks for coming, and thank you for your poetry. Keep coming back. Thanks a lot. All right, we have Bill Yarrow in the house. Bill, do you want to read us a poem tonight?
If anybody else wants to read a poem in the open mic, they can say so in the chat and I'll unmute you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Anybody? Okay, while we're waiting, Madeline Artenberg, you want to give us a poem today?
Hey, Larissa?
Hi. Yeah, if you give me 3 minutes, I could do it.
Okay, then we'll have Joe Carrere. We'll have Joe, how do you say it? Joe Carrere?
Carrier. It's easier than it looks.
Joe Carrier, easier than it looks. Hello, Joe. Thanks for stepping up. You have a poem for us?
Yeah, let me, I'm kind of in the same boat here. I need to, as Madeline, I'm trying to pull something up real quick.
I think Bill is there right now, and I think Bill's probably ready to go.
Oh, Bill, are you ready to go?
You just got to try and unmute him. He was there a second ago.
Okay.
Oh,
Bill, are you there?
no, I think he's doing some fried eggs.
Okay, good enough. So,
Larissa.
okay, good enough. And Madeline, it sounds like Madeline is ready to go. Can you unmute Madeline, please?
Just did ask to unmute.
Good?
Madeline, you ready?
Yes.
Give us a poem, Madeline.
Thank you. This is a drop title. At Ellis Island, they throw away my father's last name. He covers his Sephardic roots, blends in with the Eastern European Jews. He settles family in a Brooklyn project. When father smells one whiff of cumin-laced lamb, he closes our windows, piles on his plate brisket and boiled potato. When he comes upon neighbors, he brushes past their "Como estás?" mutters under his breath, "I'm fine, I'm fine." When his daughter asks where he was born, he points far across ocean. She collects photos of faces like his, long and narrow, high cheekbones, sharp chin, dark eyes. In school, she slips easily into me llamo. Señoritas in red beckon from grammar books. When she decides to teach Spanish, father yells, "You're throwing away your education." Now, he's lost the way to temple, can't find the next prayer page. Every day, she shows him photos of faces like his. He's forgotten who she is, forgotten his name. Every day he prays, "Dio, por favor, take me to mi padre."
Thank you, Madeline. Thanks for stepping up. Thank you for your poetry. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to end on Joe Carrier. Joe, are you ready for us?
I am ready.
Beautiful, Joe. Well, we're going to, you get the last word.
Well, that's an honor. I want to thank everyone for welcoming me in. Thank you to Chris for the invitation. Nice to be with you all. This is a poem I wrote last month, I believe. Chris has read it, and it is called "Where Exaggeration Can Lead." When you write a metaphor, one you haven't lived, can that profane the ones it's killed? Say if I had a gunshot, one blot, scar or not, since if it's dead flesh it don't knit. For every time I gave up on my responsibilities, on a seed I don't want to water, on a birdhouse shame couldn't build, on finding nothing but what's really there, on submitting to something less than certainty. Could I take the impact I never felt, like Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, all those kids at Sandy Hook, the guys my grandpa knew on the front lines in Korea, or my father, alone in the marriage bed, on the morning when hope left for long enough for him to author an irrevocable hyperbole after writing a note devoid of pretense or lies, because no truth needed be hidden any longer. He wrote that he loved us, my siblings and me. He was proud. I don't know how he phrased his last unbreathed words because I haven't read them, haven't taken the chance, haven't taken the impact because it would be physical, heart-vicing, not lethal, not dreadful, just literal.
Just literal. Thank you so very much, Joe. Thank you so very much. All right, that's our show. Any last words, Mr. Vincennes, Mr. Penton?
Monsieur Penton?
Monsieur Penton, any last words? You good?
Well,
okay. Mr. Vincennes, any last words?
I'd say here's to a little absinthe to everybody.
Oh, absinthe makes the heart grow fonder. Here we go. Absinthe, wow.
Absinthe makes the heart grow fonder. It does.
And shades of Poe. I love it. Wonderful. Okay, good enough. So once again, let's thank Nicole Cooley, Vincent A. Cellucci, Christopher Shipman, and Maura Way for a great feature. Give them a hand. And don't forget to come back next week for the Founders reading. Mark, Jonathan, and I will be reading with special guests Elaine Equi, Jerome Sala, and John Yaw. Do not miss that. That's our show. Thank you for coming. Black Lives Matter, and wear your fucking masks. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.